All right, welcome back. Time to bring in our panel right now. With us today, 2016 Vice Chair for the Indiana Trump campaign, Tony Samuel, along with former State Rep Terry Austin. We also have Purdue political science professor Dr. Martin Sweet, and also welcoming Democratic strategist Brian Gaddy this week as well. Great to have you all with us today. Martin, I'll start with you. Kind of a bit of a circus-like atmosphere this week in New York, waiting on word about the former president and these potential charges he may be facing.
Right. If you remember back to 2016, Donald Trump said something pretty interesting. He said, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't lose a single vote. Well, we're not testing whether he's going to shoot someone, but we are going to test some legal difficulties for him. And I don't think it really isn't going to matter for him. It may be a distraction, but I don't think it will really affect his votes.
And we'll see how that all plays out politically. If the former president does indeed go through the justice system on these charges, Brian, in New York or elsewhere on these other cases, does it potentially make him more of a martyr for Republican voters and perhaps help him get the nomination? You don't buy that?
No, I don't buy it at all. Getting indicted is never a good thing. I know I hear a lot of Republicans saying, oh, if the former president gets indicted, that's going to improve his political prospects. Well, it may help him with some MAGA voters, but he's not going to be able to win the presidency with just MAGA voters. So it can help him with primary voters. But a lot of suburban voters are turned off by former President Donald Trump's legal troubles. So I don't really see it being anything but a benefit at all to anyone but Ron DeSantis if he's indicted.
And you know, Martin said maybe it doesn't move the needle all that much with the Trump voters because they're locked in potentially with their support for him. No matter what. Tony, do you agree? What's your response to all that?
Well, you've got to look at kind of the whole 6 years of Donald Trump being on the national scene when he was running for president, as president, and since, and you've got to ask yourself why. This is obviously politically motivated. I mean, it's a misdemeanor. The statute of limitations ran out years ago.
But he could be facing other charges here in other states.
And he could get indicted. I'm not saying he won't, either here by the Manhattan District Attorney or by the U.S. Department of Justice, the Biden Justice Department. All of these things, including the 2 impeachments, the phony Russia hoax, all of these things are to distract voters from his issues, what he ran on, what he accomplished as president, what he was trying to do and would try to do again if he's elected president again. You've got to ask yourself why. It's because these folks that want to change the country don't want him in the way. And that's behind all of this. And voters need to remember that. And I think most of them do.
Terry, your response to that also, as we look here at the response from Congressman Carson, who said, no one, not even a former president, is above the law. A lot of Republicans this past week saying, like Tony did, that they thought this was politically motivated. What do you think? Is all that a factor here? What does all this mean for 2024?
Well, I think we need to find out, or wait and find out, what the charges actually are, what comes out of the grand jury. And secondly, even some of his own Republican colleagues who are entering into the race are not missing an opportunity to skewer him. And so I think, again, all of this may appear to be politically motivated to some people, but on the other hand, if that's their belief, you're not going to discourage them at all from sticking with him. Others, I think, are already peeling off, whether it's this issue or some of the other things that he's done and how he's behaved.
And we don't know exactly when we will indeed hear from this grand jury or what the situation is there. But Martin, this whole situation here in recent days with former President Trump also really seemed to create a new dividing line in the GOP primary with Trump and Governor DeSantis. They were kind of back and forth this week with some critical comments going both directions here ahead of 2024.
Right. I mean, I think what you want to think about when you think about the Republican Party is really 4 different elements, right? You have sort of your traditional economic conservatives, free market folks, sort of Ronald Reagan era ideas. You have your national security folks, maybe more like George W. Bush. You have your populist wing, the Trump wing, and then you have sort of a faith and flag type element. Might be a spot for for former Governor Pence there, former Vice President. DeSantis is going to try to get a coalition among all those people, and he probably has the best shot of doing that. Haley's pretty strong in national security. I think, again, Pence on sort of faith and flag, but DeSantis is that one who could maybe get some coalitions going across those 4 branches.
Tony, your reaction to that, and is there a lane here for Mike Pence with Trump and DeSantis kind of beating up on each other here?
Well, the interesting thing with DeSantis is that the Trump voter also is like-minded with DeSantis and the DeSantis voters. So if there's some reason Trump doesn't get to run, or if it's DeSantis, that's just fine with the majority of.
But if they run against each other, where do those voters find the distinctions?
You know, it'll be good for the debate. I'm a Trump guy. I'll support Trump. But it'll in the end it'll still benefit that America First voter. Your question about Mike Pence. I don't think there is much of a lane. He's going to try, and he should try. You know, I would encourage anybody to run for president that wants to and that's qualified, because it helps the debate. But I don't think he's, and a lot of them are trying to walk this fine line where they're for what the Trump-Pence administration accomplished, and he says that plenty, but then you also want to subtly attack Trump to distance themselves. I don't think he can do it.
By the way, Trump and Pence will both be in Indianapolis next month for the NRA convention, so we'll be watching that closely. Meantime, Terry, some polling this week on DeSantis showed that a number of his policy proposals were not all that popular nationally, including his controversial bills that opponents have called the Don't Say Gay bill. Similar legislation now moving through the process here in Indiana, as DeSantis now proposes an expansion of that bill in Florida for students up to high school age. How do you think these bills will be viewed, not just by voters here in Indiana or in Florida, but nationwide ahead of the next election?
Well, I think they could be viewed as too extreme, at least for the moderate mainstream folks. It's hard to say, quite honestly, if he does come out as sort of the leading primary, candidate, people are going to take a fine-tooth comb and go over what's gone on in Florida. And having just been there, and I have a sister who lives down there, I can tell you that there are a lot of people who are not happy with these policies.
Former President Trump even attacked DeSantis on some
That's what I mean. They're going to beat each other
up
over this. So,
yeah. Martin, your response to that? DeSantis, by the way, also this week, kind of trying to clarify some of those Ukraine comments last week about it being a territorial dispute that drew some criticism.
Right. I mean, listen, as a former Florida resident, there are plenty of people who are quite happy. And really all you do have to do is look at the scoreboard, right? What did DeSantis do in his reelection? Now, I know President Trump talks a lot about that he had 1.2 more voters than DeSantis did. Now, if any one of my students would ever make the argument that votes in a midterm election are the same as votes in a general, on your election, they'd get a D, right? So, I don't think there's much there. I think DeSantis, right, we'll find out what he's made of if he jumps in and what that campaign is like. But I don't think going after Florida, given how well Florida seemed to do after COVID, really makes much sense.
Brian, I'll give you the final word here on DeSantis, but also some of these bills that he's embraced that are similar to the ones moving through the Indiana State House now. Well,
Ron DeSantis, I think, is going to be too extreme for a general election electorate. He's going to do. He has the best chance of anyone to take down Donald Trump. I don't think it's definitely going to be Nikki Haley or Tim Scott. So if there is an alternative to Trump, it would be Ron DeSantis. But Ron DeSantis' biggest problem is I don't think he's going to play well in the general election electorate. I think he's going to be too extreme.
And as for the bills in the Indiana State House, despite the controversy, everyone pretty much see those probably moving forward still at this point to the finish line. We'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, coming up next, Indy Mayor Joe Hogsett facing some criticism this election year on the left and the right over the issue of crime. We'll have the latest on that straight ahead.